Hi everyone, it's Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH2503 Community Media Production, and this is the overview for the 20th lecture, which is the one after the enhancement week. And the objective of this week's lecture is to think through some issues to do with reflexivity and critical thinking. So the idea is that we're going to cover some issues that are based around that will lead into the next piece of coursework, which is the substantive report, academic report that you've got to produce. So what we'll put this in the context of is thinking about the kind of literacies and skills that we need in order to be able to think critically and be active knowledge producers. So we're not just kind of consuming passively the forms of media that come along, but we're actually engaged in examining it and pulling it apart and looking at how it works and then putting it back together again and making some recommendations for how we can use it in different ways, bring different types of things together. So the broad aim of the module is to kind of think about the kind of media skills that we to look at the media skills that we often take for granted, and to put them into a context where we're saying, well, how can we use this effectively? What's the kind of know-how that we need? Literacies is quite it's kind of technical kind of phrase really, but it's the know-how and the know what. And what does the context for community media present us with? That means that we need to rethink through the kind of skills as things change and as things develop. So one of the issues is the kind of sense of creative confidence that we need as media producers, community media producers, the kind of technical proficiency, the kind of collaborative sense of engagement that we have with other people, the kind of sense of our own personal development. And this ties into a kind of a more critical sense, and I don't mean critical in anything, I don't put the word critical on a pedestal in any way, it's quite functional and practical, in terms of thinking about how we understand the kind of issues that are related to the context within which we're producing ideas and events and media and training and all the things that go along with community media, and how we can put that to a more creative use that's based on a kind of sense of diversity and equity of access. So the kind of sustainability issues that we've talked about previously. And I suppose the bottom line really is for, how do we make sure that we stay out of harm's way, and how do we operate in a way which is in accordance with our values and our sense of self. So one of the things that structures critical thinking and evaluation is a kind of sense of analysis. So we'll spend some time looking at is how we explain and evaluate and, if you like, self-regulate within our existing media fields of play, if you want. So kind of critical thinking gives us an opportunity to step back and to look at the kind of issues that are taken on a day-to-day basis, taken for granted, but which actually identify and highlight a number of kind of key changes, such as the kind of the kind of relationships that we have with other people, whether they're kind of intended or whether they're just inferred relationships. What kind of representations do we put forward? Do we articulate when we're producing our media? What kind of meanings are we expressing, and what kind of significance does that have for other people that we're interacting with? So we'll look at this from the basis of asking if there's a kind of set of rules and structures that we can pay attention to, and what would be a set of reasonable conclusions that we might draw out of the kind of experience that we have, the kind of sense of perception that we have, the kind of situations that we're involved in, the kind of relationships, the beliefs and the opinions that all kind of congregate together, if you like, in a community media activity. So how do we think these through? Do we do this by inference? Do we do our thinking by conjecture? Are we drawing reasonable conclusions? Is there a hypothesis that we're able to articulate that we can test? So a sense of something that we'd like to kind of predict about the future? Is the information that we're drawing upon, is it relevant? And what are the consequences of how we might use that kind of information? So we're thinking about how the activities that we're engaged in and the reading that we're undertaking and the thinking that we're doing kind of fit into a bigger picture. So is this kind of clear? Is it a cogent set of issues that we're describing and articulating? Is it based on evidence? Does it have a strong methodology, a clear methodology? Are we clear about the kind of sense of criteria? So if we're talking about a kind of very participative form of media, which community media is, how can we move beyond the kind of simplistic forms of media analysis that have maybe been offered in the past in a very crude way, the kind of encoder decoder message, and there's a lot of debate and discussion about this. What happens when we move into a more generative form of media culture, where kind of culture and media activities are dispersed and they're less centred on the kind of core producers in the kind of mass industrial kind of model that we kind of came to prominence in the 20th century. So our perspectives are shifting and changing. And so if our perspectives shift and change, do we need to develop new tools, new conceptual tools, new senses of comprehension, new senses of kind of procedural knowledge, what we might call meta knowledge about the kind of practices that we're engaged in. Now, to do this, you've been engaged in a sense of blogging over the course of the module. So how can we draw on that kind of knowledge that is expressed through personal experience and personal engagement? So how do we engage in reflection as a core way to develop our sense of rethinking issues and problems through? What's the kind of cultural knowledge that we engage in? And what's the kind of stocks of knowledge that we maybe used to rely on but rely on less? That they're still there, they may be legacy stocks of knowledge, but we need to move forward and develop new skills, new competences, explore new experiences and define new kind of patterns of knowledge making. I suppose in the end we're thinking about how we solve problems and really what the kind of disposition is that we need to adopt, which is a kind of general stance, a kind of general demeanour about the way that we think about engaging with media. And in the end, I suppose what we're doing is we're kind of contributing to a sense of a community of people who are also questioning the way that media is operated and media is produced and what the outcomes could be that are different. And being pragmatists, we're asking the question all the way through, what's the difference that makes the difference? And if it doesn't make any difference, why are we retaining it? And if it does make a difference, on what basis does it make a difference? So our critical thinking is a pragmatic form of thinking, and we're looking to our experience in order to be able to shape that. So the notes are up on the DMU Commons wiki. The chapter I've changed the topic of this lecture. So the chapter is the Kevin Howley chapter, which is in chapter 30 in the Kevin Howley book, which is Carlos Fronter's The Global Turn of the Alternative Media Movement, which is still well worth reading as a kind of different framework of reference. Yeah, the notes are available on the DMU Commons wiki, which is at wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk. I've produced the PowerPoint slides. They've got lots of images and some media files in there, and I will see you at the lecture on Thursday.